All
which
right,
I mean,
everybody. This is Sick Talks number 92. I'm here with Troy Young. Um, Troy and I met. It was a meet cute on the Croisette in Cannes a few years ago during Cannes Lions. Troy, you were swanning around with our mutual friend Andrew Essex, and I think my colleagues at Virtue were
swanning
trying to
around.
sell Hearst on Big Social, which was an idea of using like the editorial contributor model to create advertising content. Um,
Those were heady days, yeah. And your boy Shane was there, and he
he
had
was
he had all his junk and had his
yeah, talk about
villa.
swanning around. Shane was certainly
Yeah,
swanning around the place.
he got mad at me that year. Um,
So
well,
that's
he's just like if he, he's amazing, but he was in full bullshitting mode, and I
hmm
I was like, wait a minute, dude, come on, take it easy. And there was another person there that he was aiming his bullshit at, and he was like, don't call me on my bullshit in front of people that I'm trying to bullshit.
I
So,
mean, get in where you
so
fit in, Troy. This is the mantra, right? Always.
yeah, that was a fun year. There was a lot of good times there. That year, I remember actually Shane and I and my friend Jonathan Nelson and
Of course.
Jonathan Nelson from Omnicom were sitting at the middle of the table at a Hotel de Cap dinner with Boy George. So that was so we had
Really?
dinner, like a nice little intimate back and forth with him. That was
How
fun.
how how is our boy in person?
Oh, he's a super compelling guy, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, he made the hits. He made the hits, and he was a kind of gender innovator and a cool guy, and wrote a bunch of great songs. And I thought I was lucky to be with him.
Oh well, I mean, I suspect you probably were. It's funny you should say that because literally, as I was waiting for you to turn up, I was like, oh, I'll just put some music on, queue up, and I queued up Roxy Music's "Love Is the Drug," right?
Hmm.
Similar period from London,
Limber up and limber down and limbo down. Is that what you were doing?
well,
Is
now
that
that
where
I
you're
have
at right now? Is that
now
where
that
you're
I have
at?
well
Roxy Music?
now that I have two titanium hips, I can actually limbo again for the first time in a
Right. You're
decade.
like an old
So
person now. Did it do you have a cane? Is it different now?
no, 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 no. Like so I got the first one done about 18 months ago, and that was a game changer in terms of illustrating how much I could be benefited by it. But it
Hmm.
wasn't until I got the second hip done because they were both bad. That I'm back to normal. I can like do proper squat thrusts. I can pick things up off the ground. I can sit in a chair without being uncomfortable. It's
That's great.
miraculous.
That's great to hear.
Sincerely,
Could you
sincerely.
like play tennis though, or skateboard?
Uh, I will be able to when I get to 3 months. They say 3 months. Take it easy on running, jumping, potential impact events. And so yeah, mid Feb I'll be able to pick back up and get on my cruiser board and zip around Greenpoint and go to all of the cool Lebanese groceries and banh mi shops that are over here now.
Right. Yeah, that is I'll tell you, I it's an eating mecca over there where you live. It
It
makes
really
the people that live in adult Brooklyn feel bad about themselves
oh,
because there's Brooklyn, there's like different parts of Brooklyn
oh
crudely,
yeah
right? But like
yeah yeah
you live in like, Greenpoint, Williamsburg is where the children live. And
what and the
then
Australians.
and Australians, and then if you're sort of a little more grown up but still like into the finer things, you might move to Fort Greene. If you packed it in, you might go to Park Slope. If you're slightly more ironic, you might move to Prospect Heights. If you're loaded, you go to Brooklyn
Brooklyn
Heights.
Heights, yeah.
Cobble Hill too is now a destination for moneyed folk.
Wow,
Um,
it's wild.
it's
It's
nice
wild.
over there, but there are great places all over Brooklyn. But when I go to eat, if I really want to go to eat and eat something good,
Mm.
I go to where you live.
Okay, so give me
Like I don't the Oxacomo I went to last night, a couple
a,
nights ago.
Ashimoko. Ashimoko.
Ashomoko. Oh, I'm really bad, especially with
I,
those sort of like Spanish uh, you know
right, the like Mexican
consonants and stuff and
pronunciations. Yeah,
vowels. But
for someone
I'll
who's
tell
never,
you, I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to eating. And there was like a tuna tostado that
oh,
was,
dude,
breathtaking.
it's
And
unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The next time you have to come out, you should go down to Marisco El Submarino, which is the Greenpoint outpost of the place that's out in Queens somewhere, and is all seafood, Mexican street food, like ceviche and tostada, et cetera, et cetera. It's unbelievable. I mean, different, less refined than Oshimoko, but like equally
Oshimoko.
good and really excellent.
Oshimoko.
Well,
Yeah, I need to go to do more of that. I also really like the pie at Leo. They make a potato slice there that really does it for me.
oh, interesting. You have told me, I think when we met up over here in Greenpoint, had a drink at Twins Lounge, since we're doing the tour of all of the like hip spots
Yeah.
around here. The you mentioned the pie at Leo, and then Casey Lewis. Do you know Casey Lewis, who does After School, the newsletter?
Well, I'm a subscriber, Casey. He's pissed off at Meta today. I just read his
No,
newsletter, actually.
not that Casey. That's Casey Newton. This is
Oh,
Casey
I thought you
Lewis.
said Casey Newton. Casey Lewis. Oh, is that the after school
After
person?
School. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I like that one, but I didn't pay for it yet. And the paywall kind of makes you need to pay for it.
Yeah, I've been paying for that for such a long time. I don't even know what's in front or behind the paywall anymore. But Casey's, I mean, just such an incredible font of info. And she also, like you, it refers huge numbers of people to SIC, my newsletter, which I greatly appreciate. In fact, that was one of the reasons that I said I have to get Troy on the show eventually, is because you have been very generous to me in terms of sending people my way. So thanks.
Oh, that makes me happy. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
You do a lot of hard work. Sometimes I wish you do a lot of hard link work, and you are like nasty on the like keeping up with things. Like you're like a fucking old man now, but you're trying to keep up with the kids out there, and I admire that. Sometimes I wish that you didn't connect sentences with like that word at the beginning, like you always do.
Interesting.
Which
Because
is
a lot of people
little
tell me that's the thing that they like.
Well, it's definitely a sick affectation. And sometimes I just want you to chill the fuck out on the links and write a little bit about what you think, because I like to know what you think.
Okay. So this gets to this. Funny enough, gets to
because your newsletter is a lot of work, brother. It's a lot of work.
I know. This gets to what we were talking about the last time, which was us sort of moving, I think, in similarly in sort of opposite directions towards the same point, which is this sort of multimedia expression that includes podcasting, newslettering, just the forefront of what media, a smaller, more decentralized media universe probably looks like for many people, and how we get to it, right? Like, how do you make a podcast that you feel is super compelling? I think you do that already with People versus Algorithms, by the way, which is what I was telling you. But then also,
big shout out for PVA.
I mean, essential listening, sincerely.
Well, I hope it is. I think it's three smart guys with different points of view that try to navigate both to find a line between maybe what the world's interested in, or our little tiny corner of it, and stuff we're interested in. And so as a result, it's a deep pleasure to make, because it's just really, finding stuff you're interested in and trying to package it up for folks.
Well, what I like about it especially is that you guys clearly all respect each other a lot, but also respect each other enough to not stand by when something that you disagree with gets said. Or
actually, there's way more disagreement that you don't see, and it's not really about the media we're making as much. It's really about, it's not just neatly sort of left and right politically, although I would definitely be right of Alex, but there's different points of view on what's wrong with the world and how we fix it. And I find it's really good for me to really try to listen to what Alex is saying,
sure,
and appreciate his point of view. And so, that alone, and I've known the guys so well for so long, and our relationship started virtually because he was living in Cyprus and I was using
Right.
him as a creative guy there. And so, yeah, I have lots of time for both those guys. I think Brian Morrissey's a beautiful writer and incredibly knowledgeable about the industry, and he's kind of the glue that holds things together. So, I feel very lucky to have that thing. It's just
Yeah.
as a creative output.
Well, I would imagine you probably. I mean, I certainly feel, and one of the things that I try to do with these conversations is just not go into it with any preconceived notions and just try to work out my thoughts as I'm talking in a lot of respects, which I'm sure listeners can tell. Is that for you a key thing? Is it like a weekly exposition to sort of
Well, I usually go into the
clarify?
podcast. Yeah, that's what it is. And I usually go into it thinking that it's going to be a big stinking pile of poop. And then I get through it, and then we're like, hey, that kind of worked out okay. And a theme came out of it, and it worked nice. Lately, I've been doing I'm on the guys. If I'm not on them about anything other than just do the homework, do the prep. And doing the prep means, have something, a topic, pick a topic,
Right, sure.
and let's get going in the feed and make sure we have, sort of an outline for what we want to talk about, because I think that good podcasts, are a function of you being, a citizen of your domain
Mm-hmm.
and really trying to understand and read and absorb and all that. Good podcasts are like I went to the dentist for a teeth cleaning today, and
Okay.
they had friends looping on the monitor above the chair, and it was muted, but there was enough of it for me to realize that, oh my God, this was kind of lightning in a bottle with these five. By the way, everybody in the cast is white. It's just like a different
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah, of course.
But like five characters that were all sort of beautiful, distinguished, watchable, interesting characters, for that format, I guess. But like it just kind of like is, it just kind of works as something that's both wallpaper and, you can kind of slightly, chuckle about, the circumstances. Anyway, I don't know why I was going there other than just to say,
Are you're friends with Brian and Alex?
oh, no. What I was going to say is a good podcast to me is sort of like, it's a little like a sitcom and a little
Mm-hmm.
like, a newspaper and a little like an academic paper or something, and a little like that, the person you call when you want to understand things better, or someone
Yeah.
that's knowledgeable about something. But it has to be, not always. There are utilitarian podcasts that just sort of hit the vein, but I think that people tune in every week. They like a little bit of the interpersonal dynamics. And so like, it's not that I mean, you can tell on the podcast that sometimes Alex annoys me, and I think that's fine. I think that's part of the charm.
It's funny. Annoy is not the word that would have come first to mind to me. Like he clearly challenges you, and you clearly differ on many subjects, and agree on many too. But it doesn't feel like there's
Antagonism. Yeah.
well, just or even it doesn't feel like I'm done with you, stop talking. There's none of that energy, you know what I mean?
But it's like kind of bizarre though. Like I listen to a podcast where I hate the people.
I
Like
know we've talked about this,
I
right?
mean, I can't
And
stand. I mean, it's not can't stand. It's just like Kara Swisher's not my bag.
well,
But
you
I
said
listen
this.
to her.
You said, sorry to interrupt you. You said this to me when we were talking about doing this conversation, and then you have since gone on the air on, I think, the Grill Room and maybe on PVA as well, and said, I have this prediction for the year, which is that Scott hates
They
her and that
break
they're
up.
going to break up. And
Oh yeah.
ever since you said that, I have heard a different tenor in their conversations than I heard before, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, he's got some. So Scott gets caught up in his sort of sweeping predictions / generalizations, I find, and sometimes loses the plot through that, but has a lot to say.
Yeah.
I think the sort of boomer humor is something that I would aspire to do better at.
Yes,
But yeah.
Jesus
But other
Christ.
than that, I find I actually do reach for that podcast when it's in the list. I listen to it. So there you go. It's a big juggernaut.
I'm making a list right now. There's a young woman named Dahlia Benor who does a sporadic newsletter called Pleasures, and she reached out and asked me to send her a list of things that I consider pleasures, and one of the things that I put in was a 6 podcast rotation.
Oh, nice.
Which is so because that's I think I probably listen in a similar fashion to you, where it's wanting all of those qualities that you just described in a good podcast, but then also going like, if I just let Spotify feed me, I would just listen to podcasts all day long, and I don't know. At a certain point, like, you have to get out of that. You have to shake yourself out of that zone to be able to go accomplish things.
Well, my advice on that is you can do that, right? And I think that I can see why you and your mind would like that. But sometimes you should just turn it off. And the reason that you should turn it off is so you should go for a walk and you should not listen to anything. And you should see what comes into your mind, because good things will come into your mind. Silence is a wonderful, wonderful force in the world.
Well, so you know what?
It's a sickness, you know.
What, silence is a sickness?
No, listening, force feeding yourself media to the point of like gluttony.
Yeah. Of course. Well, that is, and we are at that point, right, where we can force feed ourselves, Seven style, to the point of gluttony.
Yeah. Well, you're a guy but you're like endless. I wrote a little blurb. We do this thing now where we do 5 things, and I wrote a blurb because I get so happy about rabbit holes that I fall into, and I think modern media is kind of like about rabbit holes essentially, because we're not programmed to, right? And lately I've been rabbit holing on like old Carson episodes on not episodes, just segments on YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube. And like, to watch Ronald Reagan be interviewed by, Carson is like, it's a wonder. It's really interesting. You see echoes of the present.
Well, I was going to say, is this when he's just an actor, or when he's the governor? Or
it's actually it's just coming out of being the governor on the way to being the president.
Okay.
But then if you hit Jim Carrey or Robin Williams or Don Rickles or Frank Sinatra, like, it's amazing. But then this is the one I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay, tell me.
I'm sorry, now I'm fucking hijacking your podcast, but it's like,
you're the guest, right?
I got this thumbnail, and it's like, I know who this guy is. I know who he is. Like, I know a bit about his career. I don't know why you want me to watch him YouTube algorithm on late night show. By the way, I grew up with late night. I grew up with Letterman, so I have a fondness for Letterman. But it's Harmony Korine on Late Night with David Letterman when he's like 19 years old.
The best. Like,
and it's unreal.
All time late night appearance.
Like, he's twitching. It's like he sees the ridiculousness in celebrity before all of us do. He's just so compellingly authentic and does not give a fuck. And he's talking about, like, his attention span is like a gnat. Yeah. And it's just like super interesting. And then you're like, you watch that. There's like 3 segments when one was when he had just written Kids. So that's what got him on the first time. And then he came back post this movie he made, Gummo, which is like this surreal film. And then what happens, of course, is the algorithm kicks in and starts feeding you, right? Yeah. And Vice actually had done a couple of stories about Harmony. There was I think there was a Spike Jonze thing that you guys did, which was like a little mini doc. There was another, what was that, Epically Later thing? They had done one, or whatever the name of that show was.
Well, no, I mean, Epically Later was the skateboard show. I don't know if there was a Harmony episode. Maybe there was. I don't remember.
There was. I watched it. And then there was more recently, like, him on Creative Process at a couple of film festivals. And he's got this new immersive world project that he's doing. It's something called Edgelords. Yeah. Yep. And then like last night I watched like Spring Breakers. I don't know. My kids are like, "What are you watching?"
Your kids asked you what you were watching? With Spring Breakers,
my kids are grown up, or they're
Well, no, I know, but they're the right age to resonate with those actresses, with James Franco, with that cultural story. Gucci Mane.
But when they come home, they've been out. They come home. I'm sitting there. And I'm watching like a booty flick. It's just like, what are you watching? And it's actually hard to find Gummo. You have to buy the DVD. You can't. There's no streamers with it.
I have so my son is in his first year of college, and he's on a cinema and TV track, and us watching Gummo together is on his list of things to do. So he's like, help me figure out how we can do that. And fortunately, we have
that's fun.
this weird, obscure video rental place right around the corner that has everything. So, which we can get.
Yeah.
Well, so okay. So here's the thing.
So that was about rabbit holes, by the way. Yeah.
No, I got it. And of course, as to try to resist going down the rabbit hole, I will not mention the art newsletter that I read this week speculating that edgelord is being funded by the Israeli Defense Force.
Oh, really? Really? That's interesting. Maybe send that over.
Go down.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but the thing that I've been wanting to say this to you since the very beginning was that I was listening this morning to part of my six podcast rotation is How Long Gone, and I was listening to them, Jason and Chris, interview the writer Jonathan Ames this morning, and Jonathan said about Chris, "You are joyful."
Which Chris joyful. the funny tall one, or is he the other bald one?
He's the bald one.
He's the bald one. Okay.
So Chris is sort of the curmudgeon on the show. I've known Chris.
Right.
I've known both of those guys for almost 20 years, but I've known Chris a little.
But he's a little crankier, right? Yeah.
He's definitely a little crankier. But Jonathan Ames said to him, he's like, "You're naturally joyful," which has always been my experience of Chris, even though the character on the pod or that side of him is a little cranky. And when he said it, and I was thinking about this conversation, I was like, you know what? I think Troy is naturally joyful too. And I think you have very
just so misunderstood. I do get a little cranky though. Yeah.
Well, so do I. And I don't think anybody calls me cranky, at least not most of the time, maybe except for my wife, my kids. But my point more so was saying, like, I listen to you. I have always listened to you and heard like joy and enthusiasm and like emotional attachment to the subject matter, and that ranges from, of course, the media and the marketing and brand ecosystem that you've been a part of for such a long time, but it's music and it's movies and it's your kids and it's like songs about chocolate or whatever that weird good product was
that coffee song.
The coffee song, right?
Yeah. Dark Mocha was the name of the song.
Dark
Mocha.
So there was some chocolate in there, thankfully. But
Steve,
in any case,
what's that guy's name? Yeah,
I don't know.
That's a great track. Yeah,
I'll have to go back and look. But and I'll include it in the show notes. But I guess my question was, now that you're sort of out, you live a less sort of institutional world or institutional life, let's call it. Do you find yourself like more or less motivated by, I don't know what, your natural joyfulness?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think that's a good question, because where that would take me, it almost takes me to a conversation I had with my son the other night, which was about he's a musician, and he's like, I'm actually kind of getting interested in making money. And I'm like, that'd be cool. And so he's like, not like, he's like, I'll keep doing the music stuff and producing. I want to produce, but like, I like just making money like as part of a game. And he's definitely a child of the feeds and the forums and the Reddits. Sure. And the so he reads about that stuff. But I said to him, the advice I didn't get, and I didn't get a lot of advice. My dad died when I was really young. Okay. And I grew up in a small city, and I was the youngest of four, and I did go away, which was the big departure in my life. I went away to boarding school when I was 14 years old, or 13 or 14, and so my context was very different than the people in my town or my family, because suddenly I was surrounded by people that saw a lot more things and had a lot more opportunity and stuff. Sure. Yeah. And that sent me on a different path. But no one ever said it's kind of not a good thing to have to cosplay inside of big institutions, or be beholden to billionaires constantly, or right. Just subjugate yourself in all kinds of weird, contorted ways to people that you have to please. And I think that that I do have that kind of gene, which is like, I really care what you think, and I really am going to make you happy. And look at all this great shit we did. I mean, I was always good at this stuff. The reason that I met a kind of a meteoric rise through advertising and media, because I'm a pretty good conceptual thinker, and I could you ride the line between creative and business and kind of sales and content and the stuff that made me kind of unique in those worlds. But what I do like Hearst is a nice company, right? But it's a company of really sort of a lot of stakeholders.
Sure.
There's the family and the trustees and a gigantic board and a lot of sort of preconceptions about what being a proper media company or a proper company or a proper executive or a proper human being should be. And now when I look back on that, I think you are where you are. It's like I got this note after my life changed and I left Hearst from someone very famous and very knowledgeable, and she's just like, it's okay because you are where you are. Like there's no it happened, whatever happened. And so like I think that you don't, the idea that you can, like for me, I made a lot of mistakes, so I want to learn from those. I don't want to for a second be the guy who says, fuck those guys, I am who I am. Like I don't like that vibe. Because I think we all grow and we all need to reflect on our behavior, and and I'm really bad sometimes. My wife is deeply, like in a almost flawed way, like empathetic, and I can be completely oblivious.
Sure.
And so when you make jokes about people, or when you say things in a big boardroom, or when you're a provocateur, which I am, or when you just like to laugh, like I like to laugh, which means that like I'll make fun of things and people and situations all the time.
Yeah.
Like I'm always like, you're a sick fuck. Like always in the back of your mind, you got like, you're loaded, you're ready to just like fire. It's like I'm like a Canadian Don Wrinkles, it's like I gotta like cool it. And and so like I want to learn that shit, but at the same time, back to the sun advice, I'm weaving now. It's like, it's really nice to be self-determinant. It's really nice to not to be able to kind of like set your sail to your own, to the breezes that you feel like setting your sail to.
Sure.
And so I like being unencumbered. And by the way, like I've been working on some deals where, I could imagine myself going in and being like the CEO of another media company as part of a deal. And the two things there's a couple things I like about it, because I like, would maybe feel like some redemption, or it might feel like, it's fun to run a media company. But on the other hand, I feel two things. One is, do you want to navigate that currently? And closely related is, I think the media world right now, particularly in optimizing legacy assets, is so fraught. Like it's really, really tough. And you spin the cube around and you're like, you got media businesses. In the case of digital media, I'll speak to that because that's what I know best, right? You've got, all the lines of revenue that you would know well. And sorry, I just want to get you've then got sort of media adjacent revenue lines, which could be licensing or accolade, what people call accolades, or affiliate revenue. And then you have direct revenue, and you're selling your social feeds, you're making content, you're trying to, get production money, all the things, right?
Yeah, for
it's just, it's, I think it's never been harder, by the way. And I've been looking at a couple of companies lately and seeing like really the entire kind of revenue mix is changing currently. And all the stuff that you used to rely on, like having an owned piece of distribution that you could sell advertising on, right? Like that part of the mix is just like under intense pressure.
Sure.
And also like the thing that you again, you would know well, which is like walking into a client or walking into an agency. is just getting harder.
Yeah.
It's when you're subscale. It's just like a tough
Well,
racket. So
so I think that's the thing that is most fascinating to me, and it's part of why, like, to the question about following your joyful nature, right? I hate, first of all, let's just say off the bat that saying following your joy is way too woo-woo for me, and I can't believe it came out of my mouth, even in qualification to the statement. But I just, that joyful character, right? Which is really the question of, like, where can I go have fun? Where can I have fun with people who are having fun with me and who I like and respect and who are smart and who, are going to turn me on to new things? And how do I do so in a way that is remunerative, that is valuable to the wider ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera? Like, these are all things that I certainly I'm chasing, right? And that I sense that you're chasing too. In my analysis, it seems harder and harder to find a place where that can happen if you apply the condition of scale as a necessity, right? Or as a condition. And that, which is exactly what you're talking about in terms of legacy, right? Legacy companies necessarily have overhead, they have relationships, they have unions, they have so on and so forth. So it feels like the reinvention or the fun, essentially, and the value has to come from the ground up and from the grassroots.
the thing,
and
yeah.
so that was part of the thought too, is like, to what extent you are sort of going, yeah, actually this whole scale thing.
Well, you don't care. You don't care. I mean, if you're not hustling for the money, if you can find other ways to make a living, then you certainly care a lot less. And I think overall my aspiration would be to live in a way where I felt free of intense judgment or caring about other people's judgment. And I think that if you do that, you can make remarkable things in your life. Like that's really the source of kind of creative unlock. And my favorite thing to do is to make things. Like, and I say that it sounds a little stupid, whatever, like writing or making a podcast, gotcha. Or processing, like making a deck. I love a deck. I love having to take a complicated sort of business story and all of the numbers behind it and the strategic rationale and turn that into like a deck. I like a spreadsheet. I think spreadsheets are tremendously sexy. And I like it.
Differ. I like decks too. We're going to differ on spreadsheets, but that's okay.
Oh no, I think that for me, I like the number. I love the purity of the number. I like a little, number with my deck, and so I'm into that. It doesn't matter what you're making to me. Like, whether you're making is like assembling an old stereo from a bunch of tube amps, like make that work. Like all that stuff makes me happy.
Yeah, well, that's what I wondered, was whether you had a sort of an active practice separate from, let's call it work, where you're assembling tube amps or you're doing a
well, yeah, and again, like depending on where you're at financially, like the most fun things that you can do in life are like build houses. That's fun. Work with design people and make environments. That's fun. Like
sorry, I'm just thinking about my renovation and not.
No, I think that's
sure
tremendously. Oh, I love that. I love seeing it come together. I think it's fun to get on a boat and go make a day, make a trip, get some fish.
This is the thing. It's interesting. So there's a woman named Yolanda Edwards who you may have run across at some point or another. She was the editor-in-chief or the creative director, something like that, at Condé Nast Traveler. She was part of Martha's whole ecosystem for a long time, and she now does a magazine called YOLO Journal after her nickname, and then also her husband Matt Horanek has a similar magazine called William Brown, and they have these two little like lifestyle universes that they run together. But she posted something today in a Substack, which is a derivative of YOLO, about how serendipity is her MO from now on. And I think what you're saying about making a day it speaks to that impulse, right? That we want to just kind of leave our house, leave our domicile, leave our current condition, and just kind of wander the earth and see what happens.
Currently we want to leave
everything
New York.
is so determinate otherwise.
Yes. And I mean, I'm from Saskatchewan, and I'll tell you, Saskatchewan is fucking cold as shit. And we would
as someone from
play.
Syracuse, I have some sense, but maybe
Yeah,
not
so
exactly.
you've got it. I mean, you've got it with Syracuse, although not quite as biting.
Yeah.
But it's in New York today. It is grim.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cold, and
Yeah.
it's time to make a day of leaving New York. So I'm leaving next week, and I'm happy about that.
Where are you going?
Bizarrely, I'm going to Switzerland.
That's what's bizarre about Switzerland. I mean,
Well,
like
I mean,
when you
I got
have
an
the
invite to hang out with some
have the
people.
Rochefoucauld that tells time simultaneously in London, Paris, Rome, and Stade.
In Stade, yeah.
Sorry, I just
Yeah.
we watch Beverly or not 16. Jesus, what am I talking about? We watch Trading Places every year at Christmas as one of the retinue of Christmas movies because it is, in my opinion, the greatest Christmas movie of all time. And of course, there is this
fun movie. Not as good as Elf, and it's not as good as Home Alone, but it's up there.
Well, right, which are also part of the retinue. It's Elf, it's Home Alone, Trading Places,
Die Hard.
No, I sorry, I'm not on that train. No, it's Muppet Christmas Carol, and those are the four.
No classics in there, like deep classics.
Well, you know what's funny? So speaking of you watching Spring Breakers and having your kids walk in and watch it. Another movie set around Christmas, which I didn't realize was set around Christmas until I watched it last night, was Eyes Wide Shut. Did you know that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The denouement of Eyes Wide Shut happens in FAO Schwartz during Christmas shopping for toys.
Oh, I should have another watch of that.
It's kind of an amazing juxtaposition. I'd never. It was last night was the first time I'd ever watched it all the way through, and yeah, I was struck by that.
You know what the kids like now, and I just did. Speaking of rewatching, I don't even know if I was like comatose the first time I watched it, but Interstellar is quite a thing, actually.
Which one? There's more than one, aren't there? Isn't there?
Well, the Matthew McConaughey Interstellar,
the newer one, yeah, Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it, so there's adding to my queue.
Really?
No,
I thought everybody had seen that.
No, I will add it to my queue. So speaking of that, Troy, one of the things that I like listening to you, you said something earlier about being I think it was something to the effect of being a good strategic thinker or something to that effect. And I agree with that. And one of the things I like listening to PVA for, and what I've enjoyed your appearances on the Grill Room recently for too, is that we get these little like lightning bolts of clarity about the state of things, at least the worlds that you and I sort of populate. What I also like about PVA in particular is all of the little random inspiration and where things, like the little references you make and sources you're drawing upon, because I discover things through them. And what I'm wondering is, if we think about your media diet, what is sort of what's preeminent for you, and then where do you discover? Sorry about the dogs. What do you discover, like, that makes you most happy?
I don't think I'm going to give you anything that you, because you're the king of that stuff.
I haven't seen Interstellar. You might be surprised,
right? But hey, doggy, mine's boring. I read the big papers. I think it's important to mix, Financial Times and Wall Street Journal. And if you're a New York Times reader, I think you gotta get out of that bubble a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that there are people that do crazy shit on Substack. And so, I do a lot of email stuff. Like I can suffer through the negativity of Ryan Broderick because he's smart and I like Garbage Day. But then I was just looking here, like, now and then I'll pick up a Next Draft or that guy that I've been talking about on PVA, which is called News Items.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah, I subscribe to that because of you.
Yeah. I mean, that guy's a magic curator. Yesterday, you got to you pay attention and then you rabbit hole. And like yesterday, my fun yesterday was reading this guy, Michael Sembelis, who's chairman of market and investment strategy at JP Morgan.
Okay.
And, he's, got a bit of a sense of humor, and he writes and has a podcast for JP Morgan. And he wrote this sort of Outlook 2025 called The Alchemists. And you can tune into that,
Okay.
on the JP Morgan site. And what's amazing about it is it's like nerdy analyst stuff, but he breaks down kind of macro to kind of political behaviors and things that affect real people. And, like in The Alchemist, kind of frames this kind of phenomenon in America where consumption kept going up, but manufacturing didn't. Right. And so you had this gap between consumption and manufacturing that was filled largely by, post the Chinese admittance to the World Trade Organization. And with that, the places in America that saw the biggest change socially around like opioid addiction and political change and just kind of social upheaval were those places that were really affected by a kind of macroeconomic shift in terms of the restructuring of the American economy around cheap imported Chinese goods. And by the way, also the development, fortunately, of a capital system that enabled the development of a robust technology business now, that really dominates the world markets. And by the way, then going down deeper in that and looking how important those top 7 technology companies are to in terms of market cap and trading volume and wealth and
therefore mental health, the general
and all of
right,
all of that.
People's
correct. And so this is a financial analyst at JP Morgan. And so I think that and there's lots of charts and stuff and other stuff about why AI policy is really energy policy. And how naive we are thinking that nuclear is going to actually fall within under a 10-year horizon, because it's actually really far off. And then thinking about the implications of Trump annexing the great country of Canada or Greenland or and so anyway, it's a fascinating time to be rabbit holing, Ben.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you completely. And getting back to our buddy Scott Galloway, one of the things that I have taken away most from his constantly repeated platitudes, which I don't fault him for, you get on a script and you inevitably repeat yourself a little bit, but is his analysis of second order effects. And I think that's what a lot of what you're talking about Michael Sembelis doing here is going, AI is an energy conversation. Energy is a materials and inputs conversation. Inputs are a geographic conversation. Geographic is a geopolitical conversation.
Nice one. Yeah.
I've been listening. What can I say? Him and Peter Zion. I've been listening to those two guys for a long time.
Well, I like that. And then I think that what I naturally do is try to understand how things fit together in kind of a system. So one of the things that I thought I would try to do there is jump on your preferred deck tool, like in my case, Keynote.
Sure, of course.
And start to put some boxes together to describe how can you describe the information space in a way that's not like a Lumascape, right? I'm not interested in a bunch of logos. I'm interested in
new report yesterday, right? I think something, or maybe even today.
I would read that.
Yeah, I think something just came out. I'll have a look. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's usually where I start to kind of drift off. I'm not super interested in ad tech. I think it's kind of boring, but
same.
Not
just boring, but just a grift and a race to the bottom. And
there you go. Yeah. Good place to make money in the short term.
Yeah.
But I am interested in the ingredients and components and stakeholders and forces in the information space, which is a broader way to look at media. And I'm interested in things like where do people start and the connection between search and social and chat and direct connections and live, and how all of those pertain to both active and passive media consumption behaviors. I'm interested in the role and the connection between human and algorithmic curation, because my little Harmony, my little Harmony rabbit hole was fed by algorithms, and that was a great pleasure as an example.
Yeah.
I'm interested in where the money lies in that kind of ecosystem, like, the difference between, associative marketing or contextual marketing, where you pay to be part of a scene, right? Which is classic advertising, versus performance advertising, where you're looking for intent and transactions. And I'm interested in, the line between, kind of a structured or legacy or traditional media, where an organizational structure solidifies around a brand and a group of people to persist the creation of media over time, versus, the sort of more spasmodic kind of, creator economy.
Yeah.
And how those all come to characterize the information space. I'm also interested in what it takes to get to the good side of the algorithm. Meaning, like Chalamet did, in the promotion of his recent film, right? What's the name of the? What's wrong with my brain?
A Complete Unknown.
A Complete Unknown, right?
For a self-described Dylan fan, Troy, that was
no, I just had a little brain fart. But no, but it was like suddenly he was inevitable. And he was inevitable because, like, he did Nardwuar, and he did Theo Von, and he did, he also did, he did the Tonight Show, or so he was kind of everywhere, and that kind of stuff is interesting to me.
Well, I mean, it's funny. This gets to one of the things that we first connected on a few years ago was the idea of what I was calling at the time middle out brands, and which I've sort of since recoined around the idea of super format. But it's just like the notion of how you can take a behavior or a creative idea and you can find all of the places that it fits naturally and where it can spread organically without over designing the system, and therefore applying or necessitating a bunch of overhead costs to them.
Yeah, that's a nice way to look at it. That's your super format idea, right? You're bringing me back. Yeah, I like that.
But I think what Tim did basically was he said to his publicists or somebody, because I don't know, maybe he's got a creative director or something, I don't know well enough, but I can't imagine there's anybody who's just like, okay, we're going to design the world's most random distribution of media appearances, and then we're going to feed you like highly in-depth talking points to all of those. I think what he probably said was, I like sports, I like music, I like the internet, that dude Nardwuar is hilarious, get me on those and leave it with me. He took his own sort of interests and turned them into a super format for this kind of exploitation. And the difficulty with building that for anybody else is that if Ben Dietz calls Colbert and then calls Nardwuar and then calls Theo Von and says, hey, let me come on and I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about because I'm a like capacious thinker and widely read, they'll be like, cool, Ben Dietz. Not the Ben Dietz that works for Mintel in Chicago, not the Ben Dietz who is on the shooting team in suburban Missouri or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's just like it becomes very difficult for people or individuals to do that. And so, and I think you talk about this, like then you have to have a brand. You have to have the weight and the equity of reputation to be able to unlock that.
Yeah. Well, there was another thing about this week too, speaking of like how you find your way around stuff, that was essentially about why do people trust creators and less traditional media. So there was this paper called The Future of Trustworthy Information.
Oh, where's that? Where's that from?
God, I can look it up for you.
Well, I mean, don't hold to look it up.
Media Center, but yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, and the point was, they just kind of broke down like then, the trust process before was really like, I'm a credible person because I'm associated with a media brand, and that media brand has history and process and fact checking and all the things that you would assume, until however you want to look at the breakdown of that, whether it was, the assault of the right on, whatever woke media or traditional media, and or just kind of the democratization of kind of, news and opinion and lifestyle through through social media channels. But like the way that Marcus Brownlee creates trust in a YouTube video is by sort of about exposing process and an honest dialogue with the audience and responding to comments, and not assuming, for example, that the institution brings the trust with it, right? And so I think that's kind of interesting part of that. Was the observation in this paper.
So this is a little pet pursuit of mine. I went to an event that Worth Media did a couple of, probably 6 weeks ago now, because Josh Campbell, who's the CEO there, is somebody who I've gotten to be friendly with recently. And there was the closing speaker said, he referred to a moment that I hadn't heard in the conference, but he talked about, we are moving into the space of a truth economy as being a framing device for what we're going to. There's another person that I pay a lot of attention to, is this woman named Daisy Eliota.
I know Daisy, she's dirt.
Yeah, who does dirt, exactly. And Daisy has talked a lot about the taste economy. So when I was at Worth and I heard him say trust, I already have taste in my head. Taste, trust. I'm a triangular thinker. There's got to be another T that informs the taste, trust, and something economy. And I wondered, is what T, as a T yourself, what T comes to mind to alliteratively
well, I think that the junior the amateur players would say transparency, but I don't think that's good enough. So
that's the same as truth in my, I mean, it's not the same exactly, but to me it's too much in that wheelhouse.
Yeah. You said truth and trust and I don't know, testicles.
Truth. Yeah, I mean, truth and trust. I said taste and truth. You said trust. The question is, are truth and trust the same thing, or does trust, or I mean, are they associated enough that they make the same thing, or are they different enough that they form a third anchor point?
I'm going to go with tuna.
Troy, by the way, have you, speaking of did you watch the Apple TV Plus series Omnivore?
Come on, man.
Omnivore, the Renee Redzepi Apple TV Plus series?
No.
Rabbit hole. Amazing rabbit hole. But it's an 8-episode series, and in each episode he follows a single ingredient through the global food economy, supply chain.
Right. So that sounds like it's worth time. That sounds like it's worth time. I just didn't want you to recommend some bullshit Netflix time waster, which is I'm trying to get off that stuff. I'm trying to get off that stuff, Ben.
It's as you should, because time is the one, in a world of infinite everything at this point, like time is the one thing that is.
I would rather watch a video from like Ilya telling me how Transformers work, even though I'm too stupid to understand it.
Well, okay. So the reason I bring this up is that it's a great series, and everybody listening should check it out if you have access to Apple TV Plus. But the second episode in the series is about tuna, and it is astounding how the tuna business works in so many different ways. I mean, I'm sure you saw the news from Japan last week about the $1.3 million fish that sold.
Yeah, I can't believe we're talking about tuna because of my, non-linear submission to your 3T request.
All right. Well, we're still, I mean, look, I'm going to add it to the list. It's probably going to sit a little lower than some of the other.
That's funny. That's funny. Okay. Omnivore.
But the tuna episode in particular is just unreal. It's really amazing.
I mean, in my household, we'll watch the new season of Severance, and that will be celebrated. And that's what we're looking forward to right now.
Okay.
We want to
Got
keep
it.
it simple. Yeah.
I had a thought about Severance actually yesterday. So New York Magazine Vulture published a review, and it said Severance is back and it's good. And I was like, great, I'm gonna watch it tonight. My wife's out of town. It'll be cool. And then it's like
16th,
no,
I think, right? It's
the
a week
17th.
from now. 17th, yeah.
And I was suddenly like, wait a minute. I've pulled back into these conversations that I've had over the last 20 years of like, why are we talking about a thing if the audience can't immediately action it? What's the point? Like, why are we engaging in these sort of hype cycles?
That's a good observation.
From a like a protocol standpoint, where you land on that. Like, do we only give people the thing when they can interact with it, irrespective of whether they have shown intent or not, or do we try to drive intent by teasing them with it?
I mean, I think if you were on the marketing side over there, you would be, doing the hustle and all the ways that we used to do it in, anticipation. And I think anticipation's fine. We're talking about it right now, so it worked.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know. I think that, that form of kind of scarcity weekly entertainment, although it kind of irritates me because I just want to get to it, is still something that is worthwhile for sure.
Yeah, I feel the same degree of antipathy and anticipation for it, for that model, because I'm the same.
Yeah, what I do think some things do date though, and one of them that I thought of, I was looking at a spreadsheet yesterday, and the spreadsheet had media properties and their trajectory over the last 3 years.
Okay.
And those are largely digital properties. And, I was thinking about Jesus. I spent so much of my life thinking you would have models that you would run for budgeting purposes or otherwise that would always tee this, the cascading digital model off of your ability to drive audience and page views, right?
Yeah.
And then yield, and then the consequenting, revenue lines in addition to that. But really, you always had a reliable source of your own distribution. And I was thinking, let me take this one property and go look at it, right? Which is a natural thing to do. And I was like, who would ever do that? And meaning not a comment on the property, meaning like, what is the purpose of a homepage? Because we built homepages and section pages and article pages, which, excuse me, I was over chewing a Zin, which is disgusting. Which my kid thinks is bananas. Because we took the architecture of it. We took the architecture of it. Yes. Yeah. Oh no, he likes Zins too. He's got a Zin problem. Okay. He actually steals my Zins, which I find annoying. But no, the webpage, right? Like the webpage in many ways was comfortable for us because it kind of reflected the medium that came before it, right? Like you had a cover and you had a section and you had a page. But like the idea of going to like web pages, I was thinking web page as navigation. It works if it's all timely, like if it's sequential and important to me. Like I can, like, to me, the New York Times homepage is a product, right? And increasingly what they've done is try to bring more of the interaction to the homepage, right? You can slide through things, you can watch a video, you can do something interactive. So that homepage is sort of surviving because of the deep gravity of their media offering, because it's super timely and driven by time, because it's a kind of wayfinder in your world. But any lifestyle media homepage is completely fucking useless.
Yeah.
And then just like the work of going from homepage to page, and like we got these stacks, like this big headline stack and the subhead stack, and then the art, and then it's like, oh my God, like the dog loves that idea.
Both of them.
No, but it's just like, and we write with such inefficiency to to kind of fill space,
Yeah.
to do the job of, of writing an article. And I'm just like, well, either technology, the way that we can search and find and share personally, like the architecture of social, right? Either that is just it logically has completely upended the idea of a web page. That like it's just like, well, then when the idea of a media brand is ephemeral, meaning it's a super format or something, like it's really tough because it's hard to get your head around and it's hard to sell.
Well, but by the same token, though, if you think about it, the website is a authenticator, validator of a thing, right? It's a proof of existence. It's a thing to trust. It's an anchor point. And so if that's the function that it serves, fine, we understand that. But the problem is that we don't live in a world of anchor points. We live in a world of dynamism, and it is fundamentally not dynamic. So it ceases to be useful. It exists just to authenticate, and then after that, like trying to make utility out of it just is, I think, to your point, kind of a waste of time.
Yeah, and when you think about Coco, I'm on a call here. When you think about what has smashed it, really, first of all, the sort of dynamics of it are star-like. Like so few people smash it that it becomes a kind of 0.1 of 1% thing.
Yeah.
But really what smashed it, I think, in the last couple of years are podcasters that became famous. Really, like, not like podcasts, like my little stinky ass podcast, but like a real podcast. Like they smashed it at All In. They smashed it big time. And you can tell because people come to their events. And when you see people spending $5,000 to go sit in an audience and listen to, like, Jason Calacanis talk to Peter Thiel or whatever, like they smashed it.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Obviously, like Rogan smashed it, and Theo Von smashed it, and like what's her name from Call Her Daddy smashed it, Alex Cooper. But like that's where the media machine has been like turning out real value.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like that's where the aggregation, agglomeration, I don't know what, like recapitulation of all of those legacy media values will end up eventually migrating to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Emily smashed it on the newsletter side, but the fame there is nice, but it's nowhere near what it is like to be, a podcaster.
Well, not yet. I mean, certainly there are people in the podcast world who've been at it for a decade, trying to be serial, essentially, and who are sort of mystified by this new development because they're like, that's not our art. And I think, to me, that's kind of the general state of things in our ecosystem, right? Is that I will add to your earlier sort of description of how legacy media got to where it was. The other force, right, along with, let's call it, the right wing assault on truth or on gatekeepers, was also that the capital J journalism closed the door on anyone else being allowed to have a valid opinion, which meant that somebody like Michael Sembelis or like you, who is on the business side or on the corporate side or whatever, you're not allowed to have editorial thoughts.
I thought you were going to say on the spectrum, but yeah. Thank you.
Very possibly. I'm like, we've spent a little time together, not that much, but in any case, like, so what I also see as being a really interesting potential future is where we are able to say Troy Young is a journalist, right? Theo Von is a pundit. Emily Sundberg is a business person, right? And to have that sort of invented line between
Yeah, yeah.
editorial and business fall away.
Yeah, we want Emily to
in a
crush it
productive
with
fashion.
Feed Me. I love that, Emily. And, I talked to her about making it a longer term business all the time. And she's got a special sort of engagement formula because she's super creative, and there's something there. But yeah, I don't know what I am, and I don't know why, like, even it's sort of like weird to get, Dylan from
From
Puck.
Puck, yeah.
And I know a few of those folks. I know Lauren, and I know John, and I think the world of them. But when, he's like, you seem to know something about, some things, some media things, you should come on the podcast. And then I was sort of thinking, well, I guess I'm just like a media guy on the podcast, and it's nice. I don't know what it is. I haven't done a lot of framing or positioning other than just go on and talk about things I'm interested in.
Well, but I mean, to me, the change is not that you haven't done the framing; it's that they are saying you're a valid voice in this space, which years ago I'm not sure would have happened. It's like, let's put the guy on the mic and grill him over a set of questions that relate to business, as opposed to going like, hey Troy, what do you think? And that's a change that I think is significant and underlooked in terms of how everybody views the
Yeah, and there's a kind of
evolution.
groundswell thing that needs to happen. Like, Shane can go out to your friend Shane Smith and do Shane Smith Has Questions, and get a great kickstart. And I hope it's doing great, to a podcast, because he can do a Rogan appearance and do you can go with Rick Rubin and do that kind of stuff. But it will only work if the people say it works.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it is a very democratic time.
Yeah, no, that is true. All right. Well, speaking of that, I've got to go serve my
Do
masters
you make
around
dinner?
here.
Are you gonna make? Or will you cook something up?
Well, I've got to make dinner for the dogs.
Okay.
No,
yeah.
I'm going to make I got to make dinner for the dogs, and then I'm going to have a beer in Greenpoint with my buddy Sean Joswick, who is a independent denim designer, and who I think is reaching a similar sort of stage to where we are, where he's like, I'm really like intensely good at this thing. Now I got to figure out how to take it to the next step up. So I got to go do that. But Troy, it's amazing to talk to you. Thank you for taking
Fun.
the
It was
time
really
for
fun.
me.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry that I kept you waiting.
Listen, our time together has been very special. So
what do you do with it? What do you do with this? Do you edit it yourself? Or just dump it?
I just kind of dump it. Matter of fact, let's stop recording now, and then I'll tell you more off mic. Okay.
Okay,
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Yeah.